Welcome back to Home Cooking Hacks, where we teach you how to do great things in the kitchen without a lot of gadgets. So today we're going to talk about how to make chocolate pudding from scratch at home. This is not a whole lot more difficult than making chocolate pudding from the stuff you buy at the store. And in reality, this is going to be a whole lot better pudding. It's going to be free of a lot of the preservatives, a lot of the gums, extracts, additives, all that kind of stuff that the store-made stuff is going to have. Pudding is also a great treat. You can just keep it how it is. Just have pudding in the just regular pudding. Or what I like to do is to put freeze pudding into pudding pops in the freezer. And so what we're going to do is walk through some pudding recipes. We're going to do the chocolate pudding today, and another day we're going to do the vanilla pudding, and then another day we're going to show you how to make pudding pops, complete with how I built a recyclable, reusable frame without having to buy the popsicle molds. Although if you do have those around or you want to pick those up, you can use those. I'm not sure how long-term viable they are, but you can go ahead and look at those. So what we're going to use here to make our pudding is we're going to mix together some dry ingredients first, get those nice and moved around, and then add the liquid ingredients and just start cooking. So we are going to start with chocolate pudding. We're going to use 1/2 cup of cocoa powder, and then we're going to add to that 3/4 cups of sugar. That was 1/2, and there's another 1/4 for my 3/4 cups of sugar. And then we're going to add 1/4 cup of flour, which is going to be used kind of as our thickener. And then what I like to do is just stir this around just to make sure that all of our dry ingredients are mixed. This isn't an absolutely required step, but it will certainly help. Good to get into the habit of doing this, especially if you ever make any cakes. And, we lost a little bit there. That's quite okay. If you ever make any cakes, you really do have to, with cakes, make sure all your dry ingredients are mixed together well before you add your liquids. This case, it doesn't really matter. So now that we have added our dry mix ingredients there, we're going to add 2.5 cups of milk. And I don't think I have 2.5 cups in this one, so I grabbed another container of milk here as well. Yep, I was pretty sure I did not. So I use raw milk for this. I have a nice farm not too far away that supplies raw milk, and so that's what I always recommend for anything. The benefits of raw milk are very present. We'll just keep it that way. I don't want to violate the FDA's rulings by saying these statements aren't, but we're going to go ahead and do that. So now what we're going to do is crank on the heat, and what our goal is at this point is just to stir this guy until it is warm and bubbly. So this is going to take a few minutes there. Okay, so as this is heating up, you want to make sure it's always stirred. And take note, I am using a slotted spoon, which you do want to use a slotted spoon if you have that availability. If you do happen to have a Teflon whisk with this type of Teflon-y type pan, you'd want to use that as well, or in place of our slotted spoon, whichever works for you. In my case, I don't have a Teflon whisk, and so I just use the slotted spoon for this type of stuff. So making pudding is a fairly simple process, and it takes a little bit more time, a few more steps than if you purchase cook and serve pudding. But really, the benefits of having your pudding made completely at home from scratch is, I think it way far outweighs the little bit of time savings. And this doesn't take more than 20 minutes or so to make, and most of it's just heating it up in this first step. So really briefly, our steps are going to be mixing your powders together, and then we've added our milk, so we've done that. And then once this gets up to, once it boils, we're going to take it off, let it boil for another 30 seconds or so after it boils. Then we're going to take it off of the heat and let that cool down just a little bit. And then we're going to take some eggs. And with this amount of pudding, I'm going to do 2 eggs. And I'm going to mix those eggs around in a separate container. So here you can see what I'm doing is I'm just scraping out the sides. So I'm going to take my eggs, mix those into a separate bowl, mix them all up, and then once this is cooled just slightly, I'm going to take about 1 cup of the pudding mixture, and I'm going to mix it in with the eggs. And then once that's mixed in there with the eggs, I'm going to bring the whole mixture back, re-add it to heat for another few minutes, and until just under boiling. You do not want to boil it with whole eggs in there. There are some recipes that will have you just use egg yolks instead of full eggs, but I find that a little bit wasteful. So what I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and make just use. I've modified my recipe rather just to have whole eggs. You just want to make sure that you do not boil it once you add the eggs. Otherwise, your eggs could solidify too much. We don't want that to happen. Once you once that is almost boiling, take it off the heat, and then add a tablespoon of either margarine or coconut oil, or not margarine. Bleh, margarine's like toxic. Some of my recipes that I was researching and things are like, use margarine. You know, these anti-butter groups. Butter is way healthier. You always want to use butter in place of margarine in any recipe, and I promise you it will taste a whole lot better. It will be a lot healthier as well. So I use 1 tablespoon of butter or coconut oil. Mix that around, and then add about half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then that's your pudding. And we'll show you how to actually put it in the refrigerator. There's a little trick to that. You just want to make sure that you don't have a lot of empty air space above it, or it will get a big thick film around the top, and you don't want that unless you do like the thick film. I like the film on the cook and serve pudding that you buy from the stores. I'm not a huge fan of the film that grows on homemade pudding. So you can see here how I'm stirring. It's not just stirring like this. You want to make sure that milk's not boiling to the bottom, and so you're really taking the spoon and edge to edge on the pan. Stir around the edges there, around the circle, around the edge, just to make sure nothing's sticking there. And then I'm going to go the same direction, crossing side by side like this. And I'm just going to repeat that process. So that's how I'm going to stir this. Of course, if you have a whisk, just make sure you're getting the whole bottom. Don't isolate your stirring to one location. You're going to be stirred up in one place and burnt in another if you do that. And you don't want that to happen. So what will start to occur here as we're doing this is we're going to get it is going to very soon here, it's starting to get thick. You can see now what it looks like. It's pretty consistent. I want to every now and again lift up if I'm using the spoon. Just make sure I don't have anything like there's see that little dot right there. There's tell me there's just a little bit of stuff here that's not quite dissolved yet. So I want to search and destroy all those guys. Make sure everything is nice and smoothly blended. And I'm starting to feel now that if you can see that right there on the edge there, let me get that close to the camera, that is built up from the bottom. So this is now starting to thicken. And so now we've reached that point, we're getting thick. And so it's way more critical now that I keep my stirring going. I'm going to do this until it's boiling, regardless of the fact that I'm stirring it. And right about that time is about when I can pull it off of the heat. So if I let this go for a second, it will actually start to bubble up a little bit. You'll see a few of the bubbles showing up. So you can see now we're getting some nice boiling there. It's nice and smooth. I'm doing a good job stirring the bottom, making sure that nothing's sticking on here, and so we're going to we should get a pretty smooth pudding here when all said and done. You can see it's very viscous. It's not exactly milk consistency anymore. So that's pretty good rolling boil, despite the fact that I'm still stirring it. And so I think at this point in time, I'm going to turn the heat off on the burner. I'm going to let this go about another minute or so like this. Just keep that vigorous stirring. Okay, and I'm going to just completely take it off the heat. Just move it on to another burner that hasn't been on for a while, so it's nice and It gets nice and cool. What you'll see here on this is it is already filming just a little bit. That's fine. We're just going to stir this around a little bit more like this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack my eggs over here. So I use farm fresh eggs. I don't bother with the store-bought stuff. You know you got good eggs when you almost run over your chickens to go get them. Or even better if you have the chickens back in your own backyard, which I'm in an apartment complex. Landlord tends to frown upon that around here. So that's another good news about this is I'm doing all this in this tiny little kitchen that's just, I don't even have any drawers in this place. I call it the commando kitchen. There's no drawers anywhere. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of stirring the egg around. If I add some salt and pepper, I can make some scrambled eggs, but we're not going to do that. That'd be outside of what we want. Okay, so that's pretty good. We're going to make sure this guy's stirred around a little bit more. And then what I want to do here is I'm going to grab a 1 cup measuring cup, which I did not grab prior to this. Got one. I want a spatula too, so make sure you grab a spatula, grab a 1 cup measure cup. This does not have to be exact, it's just an approximate. But you want approximately 1 cup of this. And then we're going to take this approximate 1 cup, we're going to mix it in with that. You can set this 1 cup guy aside here. That'll be very fun to lick clean later. So now I'm just going to stir this pudding mixture in here like this. You can see how that looks. Clearly egg in there, the thickener. And then now I'm going to use my rubber spatula just to make sure that this entire mixture gets mixed directly inside of here. So just use your spatula, make sure you get everything out of here. And then now we're going to thoroughly stir this together. Okay, that's thoroughly stirred together. I'm going to put it back on my back burner that's still warm. I'm going to reintroduce the heat. And again, you want to pay attention to how it looked just before it started to boil. That's exactly the consistency that we're shooting for this time. We just really want to get that level of consistency going. Now, if you do not stir this quite vigorously, you will get pockets of egg kind of cooking individually, and you'll end up with a few little white clumps in your yogurt. That's the egg. Looks like we got this down to about the size that we need. Let me, totally forgot I was on the wrong burner still. Let me go ahead and move that back up to that burner there. So you can see how I'm stirring this. So this is very thick right now. You can see it's, very much ready to go. So stop just for a second. See, you can see I have a couple little boils showing up there. So probably about another 30 seconds or so and we'll be done with this part. Alright, we're going to go ahead and take it off the heat. And now I'm going to add my 1 tablespoon of butter and stir that around. Alright, so now after I've added my butter, I just want to pop around here, lift every bit up. I just want to make sure there's no butter floating around, and I don't see any butter floating around. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to add my 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. Stir that around as thoroughly as I can. And I'd say our pudding's just about ready to go. So our next step is we're going to use a big bowl, whatever type of bowl we're going to use. I'm trying to think how much do I have. I usually use that big one, but I think that might be a little overkill. Let me go with this smaller guy here. Let me see, how deep is this? this might work. I'm not completely sure. I've never tried to use this smaller dish here, so we'll give this a whirl. Worst case scenario, I use 2 containers instead of 1. So I'm just going to pour this guy into here. Oh, perfect. Usually I actually make twice as much pudding. I usually do a double amount just because I usually make pudding with the skim milk left over from making butter from my raw milk. And both puddings turn out being fabulous, but I just like pudding enough to worry about that. So there we have that. Now, this little film there, we will get a lot of film building up the top. So to prevent that, you want to use some saran wrap. So here, I have just a little bit of saran wrap, and what I'm going to do is just grab an appropriate amount. That looks pretty good. And then I'm just going to put this over the top here. Let me go ahead and move this out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. Right here on the central burner. So what we're doing here is I'm going to put the film down. I want to touch it to the bottom and then out to the edges and get it nice and edged like that. So you'll see here that the film will go around to each of the edges. And then once you get that, now that's ready for the refrigerator. So now I have this nice, looks like this is about a 1 quart approximately of pudding. That's what that made. So we're just going to pop that in the refrigerator, and that will solidify a little bit later. Of course, that's like the cook and serve pudding. You can eat it now if you want. It's good either way, or just make it, wait until it's nice and puddingy. So there is how to make chocolate homemade pudding.